hey, there's a dog biting a naked chick's bum on the cover. That just piques my interest. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Sean, and today I am doing 23 books to read in 2023, as well as my projected star ratings of each book. I'm going to be doing these in order from my least anticipated book, the one I expect to like the least, to my most anticipated book. And unless I say otherwise, all of these books come off the top 1000 list. 1000 books to read before you die by James Mustich, unless I say otherwise. So I'm ready to go, the birds are ready to go, let's get into it. We begin with a projected 2-star ratings. None of these books are going to have a projected 1-star rating because I just want to put it on the list. So, beginning with the 2 stars, we have In Scott Momaday, House Made of Dawn, and this is a signed copy, which is real sweet. I had never heard of this book or author before, but it's on the top 1000 list and it's a signed copy. So I was like, ooh, I need to get that and read it anyway. The thing I am pessimistic about with this book is another booktuber and I are doing a TBR swap where we read books off each other's to be read lists. And this was one of the books that she chose off of my TBR list, and she didn't really like it. She thought the narrative was kind of difficult to follow and like what was really the plot, what was really going on. She had trouble with that, so she didn't really like it. I did not expect to like it myself, so the fact that she didn't like it probably means I would not like it either. So this is my least anticipated book for 2023. I like that it's signed though. Next is This House of Sky by Ivan Doig. The thing that makes me have low expectations about this is Ivan Doig, I guess, is like a nature writer. Like the subtitle here is Landscapes of a Western Mind. So boring. I don't know what to expect, but I expect not to really like it. The thing about this author is they have about 30 signed books by Ivan Doig at the bookstore, but none of these books, which is the top 1000 book, This House of Sky, but every other book by him is signed. So kind of my plan is if I happen to like this book, I'll go back to the bookstore and get a signed copy of one of his books. But since I don't really expect to like it, I probably won't, but you never know. The main point is, this is my second least anticipated book. The next book is Giovanni Boccaccio, the Deca Miron. Hey, there's a dog biting a naked chick's bum on the cover. That just piques my interest. Low expectations for it. The only reason I put this on the list really is because this is an unsigned copy, meaning once I read this book, I could get rid of it. And I definitely need space on my bookshelf. My bookcase is overflowing. So the main reason it goes on the list is so I could get rid of it when I read it. So The Deca Miron by Giovanni Boccaccio. It's a pretty long book and I think it's pretty small font. So it's kind of a high likelihood of being a DNF, just so I could get rid of it. Next is Songs of Innocence by Blake. I don't know his first name. What's his first name? Blake. What's his first name? William Blake. So, I think this is actually a collection of books. So it's Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience. I think Songs of Innocence is the one on the top 1000 list, but I will plan to read this whole thing. That way I could get rid of it when I'm done. So this whole book, The Portable Blake, Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience, as well as other books, the prophetic books, the Book of Job. I don't know. Anyway, the point is this book, whatever this book is here, this book is on the 23 books to read in 2023 list. This book, Blake, William Blake. I should have probably put that lower on my expectations. Next is Walt Whitman, Leaves of Grass. I always thought Walt Whitman was a poet, but apparently this is a novel. I do not know anything about it, but I think in a Mystery Science Theater episode, they mentioned this book. And based on the context, I think it may be kind of like a prison-ish novel. And I would probably not like that, and I don't like poetry and stuff by poets really, so I just have low expectations. I don't know. I heard some people do really like this book, so I'm cautiously optimistic about it, or maybe I'm cautiously pessimistic. I don't know. Next would be Can Diddy by Voltaire, a real short book, which has some dude smooching on a chick. So that is next. I really don't know what to expect of it. The reason I kind of put it a little bit higher is because it is so short. So how can a book that is really short be so terrible? I don't know. So I'm kind of just expecting, just hopefully based on size alone, it's not going to be too difficult to read, and therefore it won't be one of my least favorite books. So it's still, I'm projecting a 2-star rating, but I do expect I'll finish it. I mean, it's super thin. Then we go into James Joyce's Dubliners. So I do not really know much of anything about this book, but I saw somewhere like someone talking about like the greatest books of all time, like seriously like top 5 or top 10 ever, and I think they mentioned this book, so that definitely piques my interest. I have low expectations still, just because other than that I don't hear anyone talking about James Joyce or Dubliners. I think people also talk about Ulysses is his other book that's real prominent, but anyway, this is the book I got from him. I think there's several books from him off the top 1,000 list, but this is the first one I intend to try. But I do not expect too much, even though it has had some high praise. I don't know, I'm a pretty picky reader. The last book for the projected 2-star ratings is Neal Stephenson's Snow Crash. This book is not on the top 1,000 list. The top 1,000 book for Neal Stephenson is Quicksilver, which I actually have a signed copy of right down here. The reason I am putting this on my list rather than Quicksilver is because this book came highly recommended to me from another booktuber. This is like his favorite Neal Stephenson book of all time, like really one of his favorite books ever. So because of that, I think if I tried to read Quicksilver first, the top 1,000 book, and did not like it, I would probably not read this book at all. And I don't know at all like how well of a book Quicksilver is, even though it's the top 1,000 book. The guy I talked to, the other booktuber who likes Neal Stephenson, he didn't know about Quicksilver, but he loves Snow Crash. So anyway, if I start with this book, even if I don't really like it, I'll still read Quicksilver since it's the top 1,000 book. So that way I could read both books. So yeah, if I put Quicksilver first and didn't like it, I probably wouldn't read this at all. So this one comes first. Hopefully it will allow me to like Neal Stephenson. And since the booktuber recommended it so strongly, I'll want to like it more. Since someone else I know likes it, I'll want to like it as well. I'll give it a little bit more patience than I usually would. So this is the last book of the 2-star ratings, but it is my most anticipated book of those. Moving on to the projected 3-star ratings, we have Dirk Cussler, The Devil's Sea. So Dirk Cussler is the son of Clive Cussler, who is my favorite author for a long while. Clive Cussler was a huge influence for me, especially my Trevor Knight series. I inspired them heavily on the Dirk Pitt books. And this is a Dirk Pitt novel. So Clive Cussler passed away a few years ago. Kind of, that's a blow to me since he was such an influential writer for me. And I had actually kind of sworn off Clive Cussler's books because in the past, like, I don't know, 10 years really, he has been co-writing books and they've just not been any good. They've been like very formulaic, like just cookie cutter plots, like insert escape scene here, insert car chase here, and just boring kind of, and just bland. But the thing is, since this is the first Dirk Pitt book actually solely by Dirk Cussler, I think I'll be a little bit more generous with it because I'm not going to be reading it so much as a Clive Cussler book, like expecting it to be up to the caliber of Cussler's older stuff. I will be judging it based solely on Dirk Cussler. That was kind of my problem with the other books, was the co-written books, was it wasn't Cussler. It was Dirk Cussler probably doing all the work, or maybe even like a ghostwriter doing all the work. I don't know. Maybe like Clive Cussler just did like 1% of the work. Anyway, for this one, Dirk Cussler gets all the credit, and kind of why I say I'm hopeful for it is since it's his first book, I kind of want to give it a good rating, just as kind of like a little hat tip to the family, kind of, just because Cussler was such an influence on me. I kind of want to give Dirk Cussler a little bit more leeway because of that. So this is my lowest projected 3-star rating book. I do love the covers though. Whoever does like the Cussler covers, I wish they could do my Trevor Knight series covers. Next is Paul Theroux, The Kingdom by the Sea. This is a signed book by Theroux. The book off the top 1000 list is The Great Railway Bazaar, which I have a copy of. But it's the same thing with Quicksilver and Snow Crash. If I read The Great Train Bazaar, Railway Bazaar, whatever, if I try to read that first and don't like it, the top 1000 book, I'll never read this book probably. So my plan is to read this book, kind of have lower expectations because it's not a top 1000 book, but it's signed and I will naturally want to like a signed book since I have a copy of it. So I think I'll be more inclined to like this one, and whether I like it or not, then I could still go on and try The Great Railway Bazaar, I don't know, that book. Next is Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, a top 1000 book by John Baron Dett. And this is a signed copy. I do not know much of anything about this book. I guess the cover is set in a cemetery in Savannah, Georgia. Incidentally, one of the books I have like working on has a scene set in this same cemetery. So that's kind of cool. I don't know much about this book at all. I read about it on Wikipedia when I got the book. I think it has something to do with like a murder or something. I don't know. So I'm curious about it. I think it's a gorgeous cover though. So since it's signed and it's a top 1000 book, I will naturally want to like it and give it a little bit more extra patience with it. Next is Judy Bloom, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. So this is not a signed book. The reason I kind of rated a little bit higher even than Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, which is a signed copy, is because, not because of the title at all, but because it is short. And just like I said with the other book, what was it, Diddy? Since it's short, I imagine it'll be harder to dislike it. So it's a real popular book, it's a top 1000 book, and it's short. So I think all of those things combined, I probably won't have too much of a problem with it. I don't know anything whatsoever about the plot. I mean, nothing. So I'm curious to read it. Next is The Mysterious Flame of Queen Luana by Umberto Eco, and this is a signed copy. Umberto Eco is on the top 1000 list for In the Name of the Rose. And again, just like Quicksilver in the other book, the reason I'm putting this one on is because since it's signed, I will want to like it. If I try to read In the Name of the Rose first and don't like it, I won't read this book. So this book gets on the to be read list first. I am hopeful to like it. I don't know much of anything about Umberto Eco, except I think the writer Dan Brown, the author of The Da Vinci Code, I think he was inspired heavily by Umberto Eco. So I'm hopeful to read it. I'm kind of optimistic. I don't know though, I really don't. So since it's signed, I think I'll have the most chance of liking this book, even though it's not a top 1000 book. And even if I happen to not like it, I'll still want to read In the Name of the Rose and just hope that this was kind of a poor Umberto Eco book to start out with, and In the Name of the Rose is a superior book. So I'll still probably, well, I'll definitely read it anyway. So this one's next. Last on the projected 3-star ratings is The Undertaking by Thomas Lynch. This is a signed copy of a top 1000 book, and it is short. So again, short, top 1000 book, signed. Probably won't have too much of a problem with it. I don't know anything about it. In fact, I've never even read the subtitle. Life Studies from the Dismal Trade, The Undertaking. Huh, so is this like a book about an undertaker? Huh, creepy. Anyway, that's also curious and intriguing. So I have never heard of that before. I didn't know anything about the book, so apparently I'm guessing this book is about an Undertaker. Interesting. Curious to read it. Projected 3-star rating, the highest of the projected 3-star ratings. So, short, signed, top 1000, hopeful about it. And now we move on to projected 4-star ratings. So these are definitely books I expect or hope to like. Beginning with Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. Now, I have a signed book by Kurt Vonnegut, Bluebeard. Now, as you know, I've been usually reading the non-top 1000 book first. Like I say, because at least if I don't like it, I'll still read the top 1000 book. This one, I'm making an exception. Really, the main reason is because this is a pretty short book. And since it's unsigned, after I read it, assuming I don't like absolutely love it, I could get rid of it and make space for other books, even though it's not going to make much space. It's such a small book. But anyway, since it's such a small book, I imagine it'll be a pretty easy read. Bluebeard is a bit of a longer read, so I kind of figure I may as well just read this one and just hope for the best. I really don't know what to expect from his writing. In a way, I'm kind of expecting not to like it because I'm a pretty critical reader and this book is like such a classic. I just tend to not like those too much. I tend to think they're overrated. But since I do have the signed book by him, I will want to like it. Next, from a small book to this. This is A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mistry. And this is a signed copy. I guess the reason why I say this book is a projected 4-star rating, birds, is because I didn't know anything about this book, so I looked it up on Wikipedia, and one of the things I read is that this book is often mentioned as one of the 10 greatest books to ever come out of Asia. So, that is pretty high praise. So, I'm hopeful I'll like it. I don't know anything about like the writing or whatever, and it's such a long book that tends to be very taxing and tends to frustrate me. And also I tend to notice more things. And if I notice something is wrong with the book, I will tend to have a very low tolerance level for it. Since it's such a long book, I'll just decide like, I don't want to read like 800 pages of this problem that's bothering me. I mean, if it's like 100 pages, I could maybe just ignore it. So, this could really go either way, but it is, since it is claimed to be such a great book, one of the best books to ever come out of Asia, I'm hopeful for it. And since I have a signed copy, I'm even more hopeful for it because I'll want to be able to tell people like, you know, hey, this is really a great book and I have a signed copy. If I don't like it and if I think it's just too long and if it's crap, then that'll make me not really care that I have a signed copy of it. So I will want to like it. The size is a concern. Unless I like it. If I really love it, then I'll be like, man, I know it's a big book, but you have to read it. So I'm curious about it. We'll see how I like it, what I think about it. Next, the last of the 4-star rating books, and this is the highest one, my most anticipated read. That would be Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged. And I am kind of cheating here because I'm actually reading this book. I actually started it like years and years back. Like I think around 2017. And I'm only on like page, I don't know, not even quite to 100. Now, I know Ayn Rand is a very polarizing figure. Pretty much you just mentioned her name, not his, pronouns. You mention her name and a lot of people are just like, oh my god, Ayn Rand, I don't want anything to do with you. Reading Atlas Shrugged, at first I read like 30 pages or so and I guess I just kind of quit for a few years. I picked it up about 6 months ago just to start reading a few pages or whatever, and I was actually really surprised at the writing. The writing was just quite flawless and beautiful, and I was like, why did I put this book down? I was really enjoying it. Again, a major concern with this book is the word count. It's over 1,000-page book and it's really small font. So I do question if this book needs to be so large. there's other problems I'm having with it as well. I mean, some of the political messaging is really like overt and it's like overdone in a way. So that's kind of tiresome. And I thought there was a few things else. There's a few other problems I have with the book, but overall, I am actually quite impressed with her writing. She's actually quite a good writer. So that kind of makes me cautiously optimistic as well. So I don't know. The main thing that you'll know about from me is that I will tell you the way I see it. So if I think the book is just too long, if I think there are things that should have been cut, and indeed there are some parts already where I've recently been skimming with this book, I'll let you guys know. So, you know, I'm not going to blow smoke. I'm not just going to say, oh, it's a tremendous book, you got to read it. If there are problems with it, I will be on top of it. I will let you guys know. So I'm definitely interested to finish it. The thing I'm concerned about is, since it's such a large book, like I say, I started this book in 2017 and it's now 2022, almost 2023, and I am this far into it. I'm just like, I don't know, 100 pages into it. So I have to read the whole rest of the book by the end of the year or DNF it. So I imagine this book may be like take me all year to read. Oh yeah, I remembered one of the things a problem I was having with the book was just the repetition of who is John Galt. I'm just like, that makes me roll my eyes. I mean, why does she keep doing that? That is just annoying me. I don't know. So I will let you guys know what I think in the end about this book. The major problem with it is probably going to be the length. Because like I say, if a book is just kind of okay and it's only like 300 pages, you could press through and finish it. If it's 1,000 pages, probably just DNF. So I'll let you guys know how far I get and what I think. And now at last we move on to projected 5-star ratings. So starting with my least anticipated 5-star book, we have Roald Dahl, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. If you've seen one of my other book reviews, I think for Matilda, I mentioned I wanted to find this book, but I could never find it. Well, I finally did. I kind of, I guess, expect to know what to rate this book because Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is such an iconic story, and I don't expect the book is very different. So I'm not really expecting to be blown away by it. I mean, I think it'll be pretty much just like the movie with some key differences, which will be interesting to me. So it's a pretty short book, so overall I expect to like it just fine. This is actually not a top 1000 book. The top 1000 book is Matilda. But anyway, since it's such an iconic movie, I want to read the book. So there you go. Next on the projected 5-star ratings is Collected Stories of Carson McCullers. So I have mentioned Carson McCullers quite a bit on my channel for her top 1000 book, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. And that is a book that has just perplexed me so much. I can't figure out if I like it or not. I might have even kind of hated it. The thing I kind of think is, I don't know, this is going to sound really weird, but I kind of almost feel like in love with Carson McCullers, like actually as a person. Like, I don't know, you just hear about people like when you meet and it's like love at first sight. With Carson McCullers, in a way, it almost feels like love at first read. Like I read her book and it wasn't like my favorite book in the world, but something about it just kind of like spoke to my soul. And it kind of makes me wish like, oh man, I wish I could have met this woman. I wish I could have known this woman. I wish this woman could have been in my life. It just feels like meeting a soulmate through reading. And the weird part about it, like I say, is it's not a book that I just absolutely loved or anything. The writing wasn't like something that blew me away. But somehow it just did something to my soul, I guess. I know that sounds really bizarre, and that's never happened with me for any other book. But anyway, since she has had that impact on me. I'm definitely intrigued to read more by her. I want to read everything she's written, really. And so this has a collection of short stories. So I'm hopeful about them. I'm hopeful I'll like them. I really don't know what to expect, though, because like I say, with The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, I was just so torn about the book. I couldn't quite figure it out. So hopefully reading these gives me a better idea of Carson McCullers. Maybe in the end, I won't really like it, and I'll just kind of, that'll be my impression of her, is just that book really threw me for a loop, but maybe I didn't like her other stuff so much. I'll be very curious to find out. I am very intrigued about Carson McCullers and her writing. Next, oh my gosh, it is time for The Labyrinth of Dreaming books by Walter Moores. Walter Moores is the author of The City of Dreaming books, which is my favorite book of all time. I think The City of Dreaming books is the best thing ever written in the history of humanity. It just completely blew me away. I have since read at least 4 other Walter Moores books, and I've had varying opinions about all of them. Everything from loving them to not doing anything for me, to liking it okay, to liking it very well. So, this is the sequel to The City of Dreaming books, like a direct sequel. So, I am really iffy about that. I mean, how do you write a sequel to the best thing ever written? How can it possibly live up to The City of Dreaming books? Can it be even better than The City of Dreaming books? Can it be as good as The City of Dreaming books? How will it compare to that? Will I read this and just be like, oh, Walter Moores, why? Why did you ruin it? You had the best book ever written and then you wrote this trash. It's such a disappointment. I don't know. I could really go any way. Like I say, it's my favorite book of all time. I mean, so the pressure going into this book is just intense. It's killing me. I don't know what to expect. I'm just so nervous I'm not going to like it, that it'll be a disappointment. But I'm hopeful still, because I'm just hopeful he wrote a worthy successor to The City of Dreaming books. So we'll see. But since I am leery about it, since there is a potential I may definitely not like this book, it is not my most anticipated read for 2023. Also, of course, that is not a top 1000 book, neither is The City of Dreaming books. So Walter Moores is not on the top 1000 list at all, though he should be. The City of Dreaming books is the best book ever written. It should definitely, absolutely be on the top 1000 list. It should be number 1 on the top 1000 list. Okay, there are 3 books left for the 23 books to read in 2023. Number 3 on that list is George R.R. Martin, A Storm of Swords, which is book 3 in the Ice and Fire series, aka Game of Thrones. I know a lot of people, I think, say this is maybe the worst book. I don't know, maybe it's the next book I think is very polarizing for readers, where they say, you know, oh, this is where the series takes a downhill turn or whatever, a downhill fall. I don't know what to think about that, because, I mean, I already have a few issues with George R.R. Martin's writing, namely overuse of italics, and I'm kind of just tired of reading about the Starks, but I'll be curious to read it. Basically, my main hope for this book is that he introduces a few other characters and storylines. Like I say, I'm just kind of tired of the Starks. I want a change. So maybe what upsets everyone else may be exactly what I think this series needs. Also, kind of something I think about for this book, which gives me hope. Even though a lot of people say like, oh yeah, the series goes downhill after this, I think people may be kind of exaggerating how much the series goes downhill. I mean, yeah, maybe it, you know, drops off a little bit, but still, George R. R. Martin, I think, is a real good writer and a real good storyteller. So I just don't really see him having a sharp drop off. I think people are probably just getting tired reading his books because they are so long. People are probably just kind of getting worn out and they're getting tired. And so they think, you know, I'm just not enjoying this as much. So I'm kind of hopeful that everyone saying, oh yeah, the series gets worse here, I'm hoping they're kind of wrong. We will see. I do definitely respect George R. R. Martin, though, and the work that he has put into the Game of Thrones series. Although he should absolutely be finishing this dang series, he has done like other books and he's done other TV shows and he still can't finish the series. That is BS. George R. R. Martin, finish your damn series. I mean, people are waiting for you. Get it done with. Come on, man. My second most anticipated read for 2023. This was actually going to be my most anticipated read, but just as I was making this list and organizing all these books, I decided to knock it down a peg. So, the second most anticipated read for me is Affliction by Russell Banks. So, his book, The Sweet Hereafter, which is a top 1000 book, was my favorite book of this year, 2022. And because of that, I have real high hopes for this one, kind of. Just because Russell Banks, that book, The Sweet Hereafter, it was just so beautifully written. It's perfectly written. It's a wonderful story. The characters were great. The themes were great. Everything about that book was just flawless. It was one of my favorite books of all time. So I was real hopeful about this one. I actually have, I think, 5 books by Russell Banks. I have 2 signed books, including this one, and 3 unsigned books. So basically I want to read everything Russell Banks has written. And the reason I chose this one, it's not the first book he wrote. I don't have the first book he wrote. Otherwise that probably would have been my next read. But this one is also, they made a movie out of it, as they did with The Sweet Hereafter, which I have not seen, and I don't really have interest in seeing. But since they made a movie out of it, and I think the movie was pretty well received, I'm hopeful for it. I mean, if they make a movie out of it, you gotta imagine someone likes the book. Someone thought it'd be a good movie. So anyway, I'm hopeful for the book, but I don't know. I just don't know if it'll be my favorite read of the year. In a way, I'm kind of doubting Russell Banks again. I'm kind of maybe thinking maybe he hit lightning with The Sweet Hereafter. And we'll see for sure. But I am definitely interested in reading this book. I'm interested in reading every Russell Banks book, but this is the one I intend to read next. Since it's signed, I'll be even more wanting to like it. The Sweet Hereafter was not a signed copy. So I'm really hopeful I'll like it. But it's not my most anticipated read of 2023. My most anticipated read is If I Die in a Combat Zone, Box Me Up and Ship Me Home by Tim O'Brien. So a couple years ago, I read his book, The Things They Carried, as you may know. I talk about it in almost every booktube video I do now, it seems. I read The Things They Carried a couple years ago off the top 1000 list, and that was just such a perfect, beautiful book, phenomenal book. I mean, it legit could have overtaken The City of Dreaming books as my favorite book of all time. I highly recommend it. It just blew me away. In this past year, 2022, I had In the Lake of the Woods, which I have a signed copy of right up here, on my list to read in 2022. And I really liked that book as well. That was a 5-star book as well. So Tim O'Brien definitely became a must-read, must-buy author for me. If I Die in a Combat Zone is the first book he published, so it is the next one I intend to read. I think his most popular book, though, is actually Going After Casiado. I don't know how to pronounce it, which I have a signed copy of. I have most of Tim O'Brien's books now. But I want to start with this one, if I can, to read his books in order, the order he published them in. And anyway, I am really hopeful I'll like it. I just think the first 2 books I read by Tim O'Brien, The Things They Carried and In the Lake of the Woods, were just phenomenal books. I love his writing, so hopefully I'll love this one as well. So it's my most anticipated read. I would really be shocked if I don't give it 5 stars. That is it. That is the list of 23 books to read in 2023. One of these will be my favorite book in 2023, at least of the ones I have off this list. you know, I could read another book not on this list, and that be my favorite book of 2023. But one of these books will claim the top spot. So when I get to the end of the year, I'm curious how the rating will go, because I ranked all these in order of my least anticipated to my most anticipated. So how different will the order be? We will see. Which book will be my favorite among these? Which will be my least favorite? Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're looking forward to 2023. I hope it's a great year for you all. I hope you have some good reading, and I hope life just works out for you and things go peachy. And yeah, so thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.